Well, let's start this panel. Our panelists today, Farah Ahmad, the former president of Life Sciences for PressGaney. Farah Ahmad has 23 years of experience in the clinical development industry and is passionate about business strategy, disruptive technology, diversity, teamwork, and authentic leadership. Her prior roles include SVP Global Business Development, early phase at Syneos Health, and Chief Commercial Officer at Strategicom, where she launched Clinical Maestro, a SaaS tool for clinical business operations. Farah joined PressGaney in May 2022 as President of Life Sciences, leading the development of the strategy and creation of a unique offering for biopharma and device companies to thrive through patient-focused development and commercialization. Farah holds a BS in biochemistry from McGill University and an MBA with major in strategy from Concordia's John Molson School of Business. Farah resides in Montreal, Quebec, Canada. Bienvenue, Farah. Jay De La Cruz is the SVP of Global Media at Underscore Marketing. With 25 years plus experience, Jay delivers strategic media solutions to achieve brand business goals. He leads a team of media planning, buying, and execution experts who collaboratively ensure that campaign goals are achieved in order to maximize engagements and ROI. He likes challenging himself and his team to deliver innovative solutions that are always driven by insights and data. At Underscore, he has launched multiple campaigns in the rare disease, drug launches, and disease state education, medical device, and health systems. Jay, welcome. Ava Sala-Amoravieta is the VP of Media at Eversana Intouch. Ava serves as the Vice President of Media at Eversana Intouch, a role she has held since 2022, focusing on healthcare and pharmaceuticals. She brings 2 decades of media strategy, planning, and buying in digital and traditional channels. Specialized in DTC and HCP audiences, her expertise spans diverse therapeutic areas like respiratory, rare disease, dermatology, oncology, cardiovascular, women's health, and wellness. Ava's career in media began in the multicultural space, gaining invaluable experience in various mediums and helping brands uncover valuable audience insights. Ava approaches media planning and buying as a puzzle, finding it both challenging and enjoyable to optimize client exposure within budget constraints. Her enthusiasm, problem-solving, detail-oriented, and goal-focused leadership qualities have earned her long-term relationships with key players in the media industry. Ava speaks 3 languages. That was 4, but Basque is one of them? English, Catalan, and Spanish. She holds a marketing and public relations degree from ESERP Business and Law University in Barcelona, Spain, where she's originally from. Outside of work, she enjoys spending time with her teenage daughter and is also a passionate cruiser racer sailor in the New York Harbor and around the world. Fascinating stuff that she's got. Welcome, Ava. And last but not least, our moderator for the panel, Lee Daniels, who's the VP of Research and Analytics for Populus Health Technologies. Lee Daniels is the Vice President of Data and Analytics for Populus Health Technologies, the leading patient engagement platform leveraging digital healthcare channels. Prior to joining Populus team in 2021, Lee served in a similar role at McCann Health Engagement in New York City and as the digital director for 6abc.com in WPVI in Philadelphia, the leading television station in the Philadelphia market. Lee's experience includes digital content creation, site architecture, mobile application development, digital strategy, studio and music production. He created the Medcom surgical instructional video series for the Centennial Hospital Group in Philadelphia, producing a library of surgical procedural videos as teaching aids and symposium presentations. Lee is a graduate of Kutztown University and Temple University. Welcome, Lee. Enjoy.
Thank you, Ray. Should have cut that bio down a little bit. I'm in the unenviable position of the last conference before lunch, so thank you for your time and attention.
Sorry about the way. There you go.
What's exciting for us at Populus too in telehealth and telemedicine is seeing content creation and development of the strategies where there's a clear distinction between awareness, all the stages of the patient funnel, and then direct patient acquisition, in not only in the channels, but also in the themes and the content within those pieces. It's exciting to see that each brand has its own recipe for success. And a lot of development, especially with telehealth in recent years, where we're seeing it more develop as a utility rather than just a video call, essentially. Where now we're doing remote patient monitoring, and that there is a reason for those televisits. It's quite the advantage for sedentary audiences or people that just don't have accessibility to healthcare. So it's exciting for us on the Populus side, and I also want to hear from the expert panel how some of the new digital assets that are made available, some of the new strategies and platforms that have become available, on how, in respect to your teams, how do you use them? We'll start with Farah first at PressGaney, how some of those new digital assets were utilized in developing the patient journey.
Sure, so thank you, Lee. Can you guys hear me?
Yep.
So definitely we partnered with Populus for some time around kind of telehealth solutions, and really what we are focused on is kind of easing friction in the patient journey using a variety of different assets. So it could be kind of physician finder tools or other kind of pharmacy finder tools. I think Howard so eloquently made the point where many brands kind of leave the patient at the door to say, go ask your doctor. So we're really focused on kind of concluding that journey and providing them with a shortened path to therapy. And that's kind of on the commercial side. I'll maybe comment on the clinical side a little bit later.
So from a media perspective or an agency perspective, I think for us, like the fact that all of these tools have become so available and the patient has access to different ways to reach to their doctor, and specifically with telehealth, where it's not just convenient, but at the same time is a way for them to kind of like get information and access information very easily. It also happens that some of these apps, digital apps that now they track all of your, not just steps, but they also give us an idea of when the patient wants to actually receive like information and how they want to receive it. So I think when you combine all of this, I think all of these tools, they provide us a way that we can target patients in the right way. I think like telehealth, as I said, it was a game changer. I've been working with you guys from the beginning since, when you established, the platform during COVID. And I think I see an incredible pattern how this has grown, so in order to provide, access to patients. So I think from an agency perspective, those are different tools that we use to kind of provide the right message to the patient, in that space.
There's a great movie, if anyone's seen it, called The Two Popes. If anyone's seen that, and throughout the movie, the conversation is interrupted by "Get up! You need to get up and start walking to meet your steps." And at the end, Pope Benedict, you've achieved your 10,000 steps. And that to me started being like, yeah, that's now become the norm. That's become the thing as technology advances, then we're providing tools for our patients and really getting involved as part of their patient care circle. To borrow from someone earlier in the panel, it's that circle of care. And I think that's what it allows us to get that interaction, the intersection points. But also, from a marketing side, it gives us insights to who these people are and where they are. And then giving that data, I'm all about data. Give me data, I'll give you an insight, and then we'll take an action. But that allows us to understand these patients, especially, I work a lot in rare disease, so it's very difficult to find that, it's always needle in a haystack. So at least if we start from these tools allow us to who's engaging and where are they engaging during that, where they are in their journey, then that gives us data to then work with our clients and our creative partners to develop the right messaging. So it really it's exciting to see where it's at. I do a lot with the mental health, and I'm all about, if someone wants to give me $4,000 to buy the Meta goggle, because I'm so fascinated with those goggles and the mental health opportunities there, that to me is very fascinating. And I talked to my therapist about how do you use that in order to get more insight of these patients. So, and everybody's excited about it. So I think it's a really cool time to get that information, understand our patients even more.
Jay, you make a really good point too about that with rare disease, and we're always very delicate with balancing, are we intrusive, is it too intrusive? Is there a privacy thing that I'm always a big fan of opt-ins. That way, if they're submitting their information directly, we know that they want to receive those communications. We also send out surveys. We did a national survey of, I think it was like 50,000 telehealth users. So we get that direct feedback. What information do you want? What was it ease of use for you, at least on the telehealth side? Obviously, mobile telehealth, our focus is telehealth. So we wanted to get the kind of the understanding about what, are we being too intrusive? What do they want from pharma companies? And it's amazing to see that there's no, they want that information. There's no shortage of a need to deliver more information, especially if they sign up for it. And I wanted to get a sense, at least with rare disease, that I think it provides an opportunity for us to develop communities, which may be influenced by, we talk about influencers, like on social media. That's one tactic that I see a lot of brands having a lot of success with. But they also find a lot of success. You don't need to have the 7-figure celebrity endorsement deal for those communications. That we see influencers that are the mom and pops and the local celebrities, even regional celebrities that act as spokespersons for a treatment. In that, bring it back to rare disease and kind of establishing communities. I want to ask Phil, because you'll have different approaches to doing that. How do you see that sense and kind of fostering a community? How do you get that information? You have an understanding of what type of information those patients are interested in and how they want to receive it. Jay, I'm going to start with you.
Yeah, I think the way we approach it, I always tell the team, the first thing is targeting. Who are we trying to target, and what are the perspectives from the client side, understanding from the disease side, especially for rare disease. A lot of those challenges are doctors have a hard time even diagnosing. So who is the right patient? So I think you start of where is that level that we can actually target, and then through the digital platforms allow us to start honing in on getting as close as possible to that target audience. So I always tell partners, here's where my population is, who can get me as close as possible. So the more that we start getting closer and then understanding, well, what are they engaging with? You know, a lot of brand sites have that doctor discussion guide. But is that enough? Like, is that enough to cover everybody? A lot of the rare disease, one of the panelists talked about underserved communities. You know, it's not one size fits all, and that's sort of, we need to invest in understanding who our audiences are, potentially, and then invest in that right message. Because then that's you can start building out the different communities. An African American community may be different than an Asian community, and how they approach their disease states is very different as well. So I think a lot of time is start from the targeting and then start funneling down of, like, look at the data and the engagements, and you start building out your own community.
Eva,
Yeah, I think obviously we see it very similar way that you do actually approach it. I think also we have to kind of like understand what we want to get from that, you know, from that patient, right? What that patient needs, and understand what they need so we can deliver exactly the right message. I think like telehealth has allowed us to kind of go to communities that before they didn't have access in the office, for example, or, you know, or clinics nearby. It's another touch point. I think that what it's super important is that we understand that it's not, as you said, one message fits all. We can find patients in the different journey. We have to personalize those messages in those different, you know, parts of the journey. And I think the targeting aspect either is through digital platforms that we use through our different channels, or outside from like those digital or more traditional channels at the point of care. I think that's where, you know, the combination and the messaging and the right messaging in each of these channels, I think it's what it brings. Yeah, that's a good point.
Farah, at PressGaney, how are you folks approaching building communities and kind of sending that type of clinical and very detailed granular message to specific audience?
Yeah, I think we mentioned a few really interesting points regarding kind of surveys and opting in, and, you know, with regards to kind of very narrow patient segments, and, you know, the idea of data segmentation. I think it's really important for us to consider the patient voice as a resource, and, you know, think about how we can include interactive questions in the patient journey to actually provide the data segmentation and then provide, you know, more personalized journeys. And that's, you know, really a rich data source that I think has been underutilized. So I feel, very strongly that that is kind of a method to develop community, but to also give the patient value in the journey, information that they need to participate in their journey, and also, have actual data at the end of it.
Yeah, and just to add on to that, it's not just the patient voice, it's who else is in their world, especially in rare disease. The caregiver does have a big role in it. So not just them, it's like who's in your circle, and then getting those voices, and then if you have the plan.
And that patient journey has expanded over the years. Now there's multiple, I think that we've all seen those journeys and those maps, that we can touch patients very literally at the seconds before they have that interaction with doctor. And also, they're not probably making that decision at that time, but downloading those information sources, having that ability to kind of reach out for whether that's something that can serve as a treatment center or to build, again, that database for future contact. I think that builds incredible value for the brand. A lot of brands are in the long game. That initial touch point with a patient, it may be a long therapy session. So they realize that kind of establishing that community early on kind of develop that essentially a family with that central feeling of connection as their condition continues or their treatment plan unfolds. I do want to ask about, we all have an understanding about privacy and how that can be impactful in sort of the personalization of patient communications. How have you at PressGaney, Farah, how did you handle that with privacy and also being very delicate about the issue?
Yeah, so it's all about kind of opt-in and consent. And there is a very kind of rigid manner to do it, but there's also kind of a more avant-garde manner to do it where you can kind of insert it into a more natural existence in the patient journey. So I think the concept of consent is very important, certainly in the clinical trial space. And I think, when you start to get into more personal questions, it has a time and a place. If I kind of think about patient acquisition for clinical trials, which is, very kind of marketing heavy, oftentimes if you put yourself in the patient's shoes and you go through those acquisition steps, click 2, they're asking you for email and phone number. So it feels very invasive. So I think there really is a value into kind of understanding, earning trust along the journey, how to keep it, informative and valuable for the patient, and then, asking for those acquisition questions at the right moment in the journey.
Yeah, I think in general, I'm going to use an example of oncology because I do work on a lot of oncology for the past years, and even from my own experience, dealing sometimes with certain of these, cancer, in general. I think it's a difficult path that patients go through and they have to navigate throughout the system. I think sometimes it's so important that we personalize every single step, not just when they know or when they're diagnosed. It's kind of like the pre-diagnosis, right? It's what to expect and how to utilize that personalization to make sure that privacy is in place. We do actually, obviously, through our, from a media standpoint, make sure that, we are in state laws and we utilize first-party data or, consent and use any different options. But I think in general, the patient wants to receive that, to be educated. So I think sometimes what an online video might work in one channel, then you can translate that same, path, throughout that journey that patient is going through with different versions of that video and different touch points so you understand the needs part for that patient and make sure that it's in a privacy and compliant. So I also think AI is going to help with at some point, especially in the EHR. I think it's going to help us to segment communities a little bit better. But I'm sure this is not new in a way. It's new in the way in the force that it's been, put in place. But I think we can navigate that space in a way that you still educate the patients and develop the information that they need.
That's a good point. I'm going to modify the question a little bit for you, Jay. I'm going to ask you, do you have a general blueprint to where you can activate with your clients, where you should activate, what your suggestions are? Like, here we are at the initial stage, or a little further along the line. This is after that first consultation, after we've done it. Do you present a plan to your clients or your campaigns and say, this is what we're going to do, and this is the format that we're going to do? How do you approach that?
Yeah, I mean, I love a good mapping. So map out anything in life, how I got here, I map out, I'm gonna take this train to this train. And that's the same thing, that's how we approach it. It's first understanding everybody knows the patient journey, how do we get there, but also like, what's their lifestyle? What else are they doing? So you've got that map, you've got the market, the brand goals, what's the narrative they want to drive, and then ultimately our plans sort of converge all. And then finding the partners that talk about where are we, where a certain partner will fit in different stages. And that's ideal. Like, I always say, tell the team, put budget aside for a second. Let's just map out the different journeys and where does it all intersect.
And do you, with each representative group, do you suggest creating different messages for different demographics, or is there pretty much like, here's the core message, we can kind of tweak it a little bit here
In
and
an
there?
ideal world, again, put money aside.
Perfect world.
In a perfect world, yes, because you think about yourself as a consumer. How am I going to, I'm planning a trip to Croatia. What sites am I going to look at? I'm going to look at multiple sites. So, but then at the same time on social media, I want to see where to go at those places. So every consumer is different. And now with the beauty of digital, the technology these days, you have all these sources. So you have to be very cognizant of what message to serve. I wouldn't serve the same message on a YouTube video, or not a YouTube video, like a banner, than something on TikTok. Then you're not utilizing the TikTok as leveraging its best strength.
Yeah, I think again, I'm going back to the same example because I feel like sometimes patient testimonials helps a lot. And I think those experiences of stalking that it's so scary for you when you hear the news, when you hear that word, regardless what it is, it can be cancer, it can be a vascular issue, they all have a painful point where you need that. I think that message, that it's relevant for what you're going through next time. So I feel like, we usually try to get very tactical on things, and I think we need to put more strategy on how we want to drive that, where we need to kind of make sure that, the brand is actually across the board with valuable and in a touchy way, in a way that you relevate and you resonate with what they're going through. And again, I think somebody said before, putting the patient in front, but that's exactly what it is, right? Know, what they need. I mean, I was actually, I don't know if they're here, but I was listening to a webinar from Fraser, and they had one of their pharma companies there, and one of the guys was saying that they had 350 patient journeys that they were going through. Obviously, a message for 350 patient journeys is very difficult to kind of execute. But what he was trying to say is find that unique message that you can, travel with, all of this unique, idea across all of the journeys. So I think we need to make sure that we personalize sometimes not just the message in the journey, but where, right? If it's in telehealth, or if it's more digital, or you're in the point of care, specifically at the office. So make it relevant for where you are,
I'm gonna add on here. So I think Jay and Emma, you made some really interesting comments. So certainly, your example of the travel example, there's AI and there's kind of components that will segment your research based on, maybe what are the top 3 things that you're interested in. And then you mentioned kind of patient testimonials. And I think earlier when we were talking about oncology, you were talking about kind of the patient navigators and expectations. So in the PressGaney data, we see that basically uncertainty always correlates with negative patient experience. And so the more uncertain an experience is, if you go to the ER, you don't know what's going to happen, what your outcome's going to be. You know, it's ripe for a negative patient experience. Whereas if you maybe go, you know, to deliver a baby, you're pretty sure, hopefully, you will end up with a baby, and you'll come out with what you expected. So that keeping that in mind, I think what we, you know, need to keep coming back to is how do we kind of enable that data to be accessible by consumers and by patients? You know, what do they expect in their journey? How do we equip them for what that experience is going to be like, and then they will routinely have a better experience.
Yeah.
And that's, you know, very similar in either the commercial world or the clinical world. And really, you know, an area I think that our industry has kind of faltered in is actually making that information in the public sphere, right? The patient testimonials, understanding how, or enabling patients to know from somebody they trust, which could look like them, you know, could be their neighbor, what was their journey like, what was the reality of it, what didn't go so well, and how to prepare for that.
Yeah, and I want to add one thing, that sometimes a lot of friends in general, and I think they feel like that, well, now you're at this correct, you're in my medication, that's it. You know? Yeah. I think there is an aftermath, right? I think sometimes you go through the, you know, again, like maybe oncologist, like one of the things that I'm working a lot right now, but like, maybe you have surgery and now you're good. But maybe you're not, maybe there is an aftermath. So I think when I say being in the journey, I don't mean just being in the journey up to the point that you get the medication. It's continuing that you become part of that patient's, you know, whole, you know. I think there's different tools that now, these data that you're talking about, I think they're very useful, you know, and I think more and more, I think the industry is gonna make them accessible. How we use and segment that information, I think that's the part that we need to make sure that, you know, it's compliant and, you know, it's useful for all, you know.
Jay, I want to ask too about underscore, but that's a really good point, because at Populus, what we're doing with data and how we're impacting that patient journey is that because our results are in real time, they're updated every 15 minutes with our patient acquisition tool, they can see how effective, how impactful their message, their creative is performing, and basically in real time, and we can literally tell them, they can see for themselves, we give them access to the dashboard. We also provide insight for a number of different teams, but they can see that this patient reached a certain path along the journey and they were exposed to this message. This patient went all the way through and responded very well to this message. By pulling in all that data, we can influence their budget, their resources, and how much investment they're putting in a specific channel. In general, what we've seen, and you've probably seen it too as marketers, that social does a great job for awareness. Not necessarily the best for patient acquisition, but we've seen instances where it works very well for them. What we've seen work very well on the patient journey impacting direct prescriptions has been search. Any type of, whether it's endemic or basic search engines are fantastic in delivering qualified patients, that high value patient audience. We've seen that, and it's like that type of, those search responses we can see, we know which words, which phrases resonated and performed highly, and how far along the path each patient or each exposed audience performed along that way. So that's how we're using data to influence the campaign and our partners with helpful, insightful information. Jay, how does underscore do it with data?
It's a similar thing. So as we get all the you know, first of all, it's just first sort of looking under the hood and understanding when we look at a partner what data is available to us, and then and then how do we all tie it together? Because again, it starts off with the targeting, and then from there, what data can we leverage? And something like search, especially for rare disease, they're going to search and click on anything that gives me information. So it's not just a patient copy, it's an HCP copy as well, because they're invested. And if not the patient, then the caregivers are definitely. So, you know, a partner, a lot of the things that the search is, you don't really know if it's actual patient that's going to the site. So, you know, partnering with someone like PulsePoint, they've got this technology that allows us to tie in who's going to this site and mapping it to their data that they have available, their ID data, And that way it gives us a better idea of, oh, this is definitely a patient versus an HCP. And I think that kind of thing of how we can distinguish between the two, the more that guidance we can get on a, as again, with being compliant, but still gets us close to that data, then we can see, well, how does this affect us? What's the next point of that narrative?
That's a really good point too. And one more observation right here, and then we'll open it up for questions if anybody has questions for us. It's nearing the end of the time. That I think we spoke about that too before we met the first time, just to get a barometer, a sense of what we're going to discuss today. And I think that we also came to an important conclusion that to understand the patient journey is also to understand the healthcare profession. Yeah, we're going to stay. So to that point, Farah, why don't you start and say how are you using the HCP journey or HCP level information to impact the patient journey?
So certainly, we see in the data that PressGaney collects at scale, right, the kind of treating like healthcare workers, you tend to see that there's a foreshadowing of the issues that you see in patient experience data. So the more friction or disengagement there is with a particular profession, that's going to typically lead to disengagement with the patient. So that's a very strong correlation that is quite clear in the PressGaney data.
Yeah, I think for us, more and more, regardless we have one HCP or DTC business or both, I think we work together along with any agency to understand either one or the other. So I think it's super important you can't have a plan without not understanding what the HCP message is and what is the actual journey for that HCP to understand when the patient comes in to actually prescribe, right? I think for us, it's very important, managing like both, understanding that they both kind of talk to each other. And at the end of the day, the influencer, a lot of times thinks the patient itself, because, it goes search like for the information, uses that information to actually talk to their doctor. So you want to make sure that what the doctor responds back is, it's in line with you that you kind of communicating from a brand perspective. So I feel like, very important for us to and I think another thing I would say is, and I don't know if we do it in our environment in general, but it's really test, and whatever insights those tests they give you, you ship. You don't necessarily have to put, have $1 million in plans. You can actually do it today, like with a small test, so that you can see and get insights, and then move it to, whatever works, and keep it whatever works, and whatever doesn't work, you move it. It's there are platforms, options, and ways to kind of identify, ways to get the HCP and the patient in the same mindset.
Also seeing development too, the prevalence of social media. Like a lot of the younger generation of HCPs are embracing social media, they're embracing the technology. They're acting as essentially healthcare influencers themselves. Some are a little bit more shy, but we've seen kind of a prevalence of that where they're very excited to be kind of front and center and to be spokespersons for either a specific therapy or medication. So there's also that impact where HCPs are embracing the technology and getting out in the public to be kind of the KOL for specific treatment. Just want to reach out and ask anybody has any questions for the panel regarding the patient journey. Yes, sir.
So we talked a lot about patient journeys of kind of a similar shape or breadth, if you will. I deal a lot in chronic disease and autoimmune conditions, and so for those folks, they're dealing with this for their entire life, and when they get on drug, the idea is they're going to be on drug for the rest of their life. So how do you approach that kind of, if you want to call it a patient journey, where there's the beginning and they're on treatment, but now there's this sort of for the rest of their life element? Where does digital health fit into that, and what do you think are some good approaches to talking to patients in that kind of stage of treatment of their life?
Ava, I think you mentioned specifically that the patient doesn't end.
I think it doesn't end there. So I think like a lot of times it's like, first of all, being empowerful to what that patient is going through, right? So I think when you and you begin that journey with that patient, you already know how they're going to go through it. So I think sometimes it's you know that sometimes contextual makes a lot of sense for them because they relate to the messaging that it's happened within that environment. So I think it's a matter of being consistent in following that path to make sure that they don't leave you, and when you don't pay attention, they go to somewhere else because you're not alone. So you're gonna have messages that they're gonna be telling them, come and try me, right? But I feel like in general, I think if we do it from the beginning, and again, I think that's a connection between the HCP also as well to kind of like follow through, and you understand that they went through like a tough time and understand that what they need. And some of these digital tools that we were talking today, I think they also help, apps that you track your health. They not only count the steps that you have, I mean, they tell you when and why you want that information, that healthcare information. So I think those tools are also tools that you need to look outside of just spots and dots for media per se, that can drive them to your site and show them that, there is a journey beyond, today, that it's a journey for a long period of time. I mean, that's okay.
No, I completely agree, and I think, you have an opportunity to facilitate or be the conduit of the community. So build that community and then sort of connect them together. I'm continuing down this path on this treatment, but I'm still having these side effects, and then be that resource of, hey, talk to these other folks that are going through the same thing. That's what social media is. Social media is finding people that I may be going through the same thing, and how have they gotten through it, and then it pushes over, it gets them to that next level. But I think community building is an opportunity to keep that going.
Yeah, no, I'll just add, so, always kind of coming back to the PressGaney measurement mentality. So, journeys are dynamic. You have, every treatment has kind of a risk and a benefit, and workload associated to it, and every illness has workload associated, and every individual has a capacity to take on a certain level of workload, which may differ as their life circumstances changes, as the disease progresses, as the treatment burden becomes, heavier. So I think it's really important to kind of recognize that, be empathetic to that journey, and where that patient is in their journey. And in some cases, it could get more complex. In some cases, it could get less complex. But I think the points that you both made are very relevant. You want to really meet the patient where they are.
And I want to add one thing on this, if I may. I mean, I think you mentioned it before. I think the caregiver becomes a very important person in that journey, especially if it's further, because they need to understand also what they're going through. So I think the brand helping that, navigate through that, all of that, I think it would be very helpful. And sometimes I don't feel we talk enough with the caregiver because we don't understand exactly who it is.
Yeah.
We don't know if it's a daughter, it's a son, it's it's a husband, it's whoever it is. And I think sometimes the research about who they are, but how they navigate into that system, I think it's important to especially for these types of disease.
Yes, sir.
Jay, earlier you mentioned something to the effect of, this is where my patient is, how close can you get me? As you're building out your broader plans and thinking about different places in the patient journey, how are you prioritizing tactics that can get really directly to that patient or really close to that patient versus some that go a bit wider?
I think it comes down to before we begin any plan, it's discussion with the clients on what are the KPIs. And I think that's the biggest thing to determine, because you're never gonna, if you're lucky, great that you got that person, but media tactics, you're not gonna get there. So if we all agree to, well, it could be something as going to the site and they download something, but also a lot of, if they're going to, health endemic sites, patient sites too, how do we track that, the engagement there as well? So I think it starts from all the KPIs, and then once we agree to that, based on these indicators, plus what you have seen clients as well, then that can help us optimize accordingly. But I think if we agree to the very beginning, that's what it is. We still have to be flexible as things change, but that's how we approach it. It's the KPI discussion is a huge component to how we approach it and that activate and optimize.
All right. Yeah, thanks, everybody. Enjoy watching.